They said no one ever made it out alive after entering the basement of this hospital. But last night, as I stood in that cold, silent darkness, something brushed past me. And it wasn't human. I froze, my heart pounding, as the air turned colder and a faint whisper echoed through the empty halls. What happened next? You won't believe it. The entrance to the hospital was almost impossible to find, hidden beneath a tangle of overgrown vines. The air inside was thick with the smell of mildew, and the walls were cracked, as though the building itself was desperately trying to break free. The only sound was the creak of the old floorboards beneath my feet. Locals have always whispered about strange shadows moving under the flickering light in the basement, but no one ever dared to go down there. Until now. Built in the 1930s, this hospital was originally meant to house patients with mental illnesses. But what most people don't know is that it quickly became an experimental asylum, where strange and dangerous practices were carried out. The hospital was shut down after a string of unexplained disappearances. People claimed they could still hear the screams echoing from the basement at night. Tonight, we're going deeper than anyone ever has before, into that forbidden basement to uncover the truth, or whatever has been hiding there all these years. The history of this place is far darker than most realize. In the 1940s, a notorious doctor named Dr. Harris was put in charge of the asylum. It said he conducted inhumane experiments on patients, subjecting them to horrific procedures in the name of research. Those who resisted his methods were never seen again. The hospital's records from that time were mysteriously erased, leaving nothing but empty files and unanswered questions. But the most chilling part of this story isn't in the records. It's the rumors. Patients vanished without a trace, and those who claimed to know what happened were often silenced. Locals still speak of a ghostly figure, said to be Dr. Harris himself, seen standing at the basement's entrance, watching anyone brave enough to approach. But what really haunts this place, who or what, is still lurking here decades later? And why do people still claim to hear whispers in the dark, calling their names? Tonight, we're about to find out. As we stepped into the hospital, the air grew thick with decay. The upper floors were a haunting sight. The once pristine hallways were now covered in layers of dust and grime. Doors hung off their hinges, and the floorboards creaked beneath our weight. Every step felt like we were disturbing something long dead. The walls were covered in unsettling graffiti, strange symbols, and disturbing faces scratched into the paint. The silence was broken only by distant, muffled sounds, like faint footsteps or whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. A chill ran down my spine as we moved forward, unsure whether the sounds were real or our minds playing tricks. Then we found it, the entrance to the basement. The door was old and heavy, its metal frame rusted and covered in deep scratches on the inside, as if something had tried to claw its way out. It felt as though the door was trying to keep something locked in or keep us out. My hand hovered over the handle, but I hesitated. The air around it felt different, colder. Beside the door, we found an old journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. I carefully opened it, the words barely legible, but one entry caught my eye. "If you're reading this, don't go down there. They'll see you before you see them." I froze. Whoever had written this knew exactly what we were about to face. My heart raced as I looked at the dark doorway before us. We were already too far in. There was no turning back. We gathered our courage and slowly turned the handle, the door creaking open. A cold draft hit us immediately, a stark contrast to the thick, stale air upstairs. The basement was shrouded in darkness, save for the faint flicker of a dying light bulb hanging from the ceiling. As we stepped down, the temperature dropped even more, sending chills through our bodies. I could hear whispers, soft and indecipherable, coming from deep within the shadows. Every corner seemed to hold a secret, and every step we took felt like we were getting closer to something watching us. We moved deeper into the basement, and that's when we found it, a small, dimly lit room. Inside were rows of old unmarked medical equipment, rusted metal tables, syringes with needles still attached, and strange tools I couldn't even begin to recognize. But what stood out the most were the chains bolted to the floor, scattered around the room like they were left in a hurry. It looked like a place meant for restraining someone, but why? What kind of experiments had been carried out here? The whispers grew louder, and I felt a presence behind me. Someone, or something, was in this room with us. As I slowly panned the flashlight across the room, my heart skipped a beat. A shadow moved at the edge of the beam, something too fast to be human, too unnatural to be anything else. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then, the shadow moved again. Only this time it was closer than anything should have been. My pulse quickened as I turned the light toward it, but nothing was there. The whispers, which had been growing louder, suddenly stopped, leaving an eerie silence hanging in the air. I turned back, trying to shake off the dread building in my chest, and that's when I saw it, a dusty old photograph pinned to the wall. I reached out, cautiously pulling it from the nails. The image was haunting, a doctor in a white coat standing among several patients. But as I looked closer, I saw something terrifying. The faces of the patients were scratched out. Every single one, except for one figure standing in the back. His face was intact, but his eyes, they were locked onto the camera, directly staring at me. It was as though he knew I would find this picture. Just as I reached for the photo, something changed. The air around me turned ice cold. I could see my breath in the air as the temperature plummeted. The whispering resumed, but now it was more distinct. Faint at first, but then it grew louder, closer. Then, everything went silent. The room was still. My heart raced in my chest, and then, from the darkness behind me, I heard it. Soft at first, but unmistakable. My name. It sent a wave of terror coursing through me. I whipped around, but no one was there. Just shadows. Watching, waiting. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into total darkness. I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, and that's when the footsteps began. They were slow at first, but they grew louder, faster, as if something, was rushing toward me. My breath hitched, panic rising in my chest. I could hear the heavy footsteps, the scrape of something dragging behind them. It was close, too close. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I could do was run. I sprinted up the stairs, my legs burning with each step, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still following me. The footsteps grew louder behind me, echoing in the silence of the stairwell. I dared to glance back, and that's when I saw it. A figure standing motionless at the bottom of the stairs. Its face was shrouded in darkness, but I could make out its hollow eyes, glowing faintly in the dark. It was watching me, waiting for me. I didn't stop running until I reached the outside. But even now, as I stand here, the memory of those eyes, those cold, empty eyes, still haunts me. I don't know who or what that was, but one thing is clear. Something still lingers in this basement, waiting for the next visitor. The air is thick with a presence that can't be explained, a feeling of being watched, of something or someone still trapped within these walls. Was it the ghost of the doctor, still trying to finish his horrific experiments? Or was it a victim, someone who never found peace? Or is it something much darker, something older that's been here long before the hospital was ever built? What do you think is really haunting this hospital? Could it be the spirits of the lost patients, or something more sinister? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you dare to explore more places like this with me, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you if I survive the next trip.